Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I was going to do 5 things learned from last night's Sevilla game, and I realised I literally couldn't think of 5 things to talk about. Don't know if it's baby brain or whatever, but I couldn't do it. I sat there and came up with maybe Alvarez, definitely Rico Lewis, at a push Grealish coming off at half-time, Palmer maybe. And it was starting to get a bit of a stretch. So I thought, you know what? Today I'll just talk about the one person that everyone wants to talk about, Rico Lewis. Because it looks like we've got ourselves a new fullback. So we're going to do that today. We're going to talk a little bit about Rico Lewis. Because there's not many things more exciting than a 17-year-old Manchester City fan coming through and potentially looking like a superstar. Because it absolutely is worth a little bit more of an investigation. I also want to play a clip from the latest episode of the playlist over on 888 Sport. Where they're talking, in my opinion, quite stupidly, about the idea that Gabriel Jesus has had a bigger impact than Erling Haaland. I'll play the clip, but then we'll discuss it afterwards.
Every Manchester United fan will tell you what a breath of fresh air he's been. But I'm not going to let that overshadow the fact that Jesus, above him, has his team's top, and it's amazing. And Haaland is just...
May I make a case for Gabriel Jesus top? Just in case you want.
Certainly.
I'll make the case, and then you can dismiss it if you wish. In terms of in terms of the impact on the teams, in terms of the current standing of the teams, I think that with or without the signing of Haaland, Manchester City would be either at the top of the league or very near the top of the league and most likely to win the Premier League, with or without him. Without the signing of Gabriel Jesus, I honestly think Arsenal would be at best in the conversation for top 4. So in terms of the change, in terms of the impact, in terms of the difference, I think Gabriel Jesus has had more of an impact on his team than maybe everybody else combined. I think he has completely changed the entire perception and entire expectation of a club the size of Arsenal. Where do you think Manchester City will finish the league with Haaland? Do you think they'll be champions?
Yeah.
Where, just hypothetically, where do you think they would have finished the league without Haaland?
Without Haaland, Jesus and Sterling.
No, presumably they would have kept a striker. Presumably they would have kept Jesus. You think they'd win the league, presumably?
Look, I sort of get what Roy's on about, but the question's sort of unfair. The idea that Manchester City will win the league anyway, the idea is that no player could ever then have a bigger impact, ever. Like, because they were the best team. So the idea, you know what I mean? It's sort of a self-defeating question, really. I think the way to reframe the question would be, who's had the biggest impact? Erling Haaland's had the biggest impact on the league, on football in England, full stop. Erling Haaland has single-handedly redefined what goal scoring is in the Premier League. He has absolutely had the biggest impact on this country. Yeah, Arsenal doing really well, but no one really cares about Jesus bagging a handful of goals over there. That isn't changing anything other than helping Arsenal improve, but it's not all on Jesus either. That would play down Odegaard, Saka, Martinelli, Arteta's improvement, Saliba, Gabriel, all these other players. Jesus has been great, but in general, in terms of impact, I mean, how can you look past Haaland? This guy, look, bookies are offering to pay out or cash out for 40 goals a season. It's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely Haaland. He has changed what the Premier League thought was possible. It's Haaland, obviously. Anyway, go and watch that video. The link's in the description below, and let them know that the answer is clearly Erling Haaland. I mean, Jesus has been good, and I'm happy for him. I love Jesus, but come on, man. It's not even comparable. Anyway, let's talk about a superstar. A potential superstar. Now, if you don't really know much about Rico Lewis, he's a 17-year-old lad who's been at Manchester City since he was a kid. He's from Radcliffe, which if you're not from around here, that's a place in Bury, which is just North Manchester, which is not far from where I live right now in Ramsbottom. Basically, he's a very local lad. He's local to Manchester. Bury is a North Manchester area, which is loads of blues in North Manchester. He's a City fan, a local lad who absolutely has Manchester and Man City in his blood, in his DNA. And it's wonderful. Now, Guardiola has been very, very complimentary about this guy as well. I'm going to try and find the quotes from Guardiola about Rico Lewis, so I'll read them in a minute. But basically, what I want to talk about today is the idea that Rico Lewis actually could be set for an introduction to the Manchester City team in the way that Phil Foden was many years ago. Now, I was looking at the stats last night as well. Once again, I'll get them up. But he looks like he's already going to get more minutes than Phil Foden did in his first breakthrough season around a similar age, which is actually quite remarkable. I do think we're seeing the signs here of a guy who has that trust from the manager. I think he does. And like the quotes from Guardiola about him, well, Guardiola said this. He said, he's so clever, so intelligent. A standing ovation all the way down the pitch. He played really good. He's so good and so intelligent. If you say something, he understands everything. He doesn't need to practice more. I'm really happy for him. We see him every day, he went on to say. We don't give presents here at Man City, not just because he's a Man City fan, but because he's from the academy, but he's going to play. He had to earn it. We've seen him since day one in the USA in pre-season, and in the training sessions, it was this guy has something special. That's Pep Guardiola, possibly the greatest manager of all time, one of the most influential people in the history of football, a guy who's trained with Messi, Iniesta, Xavi, De Bruyne, Philipp Lahm, the list goes on and on and on and on. Some of the all-time genuine greats, and I mentioned Lahm for a reason, obviously, but he's worked with some of the greatest ever in their positions, especially some of the greatest fullbacks of all time. Look at what he had at Barcelona, Alves, Jordi Alba, Abidal at one point. He had also... obviously, Philipp Lahm, over at Barcelona, at City. He's had a few good fullbacks as well. Kyle Walker, Joao Cancelo. He's also been managed, even though they were older, the senior players like Sanya, Zabaleta, Kolarov, 𝐿𝐿 at Man City for a year. Basically, Guardiola's been around a lot of very high-quality fullbacks over the years. And Guardiola absolutely loves this kid. Now, I don't think there's many better kind of like methods of praise you can get from Guardiola than when he praises a player's intelligence. Honestly, that's the trait that Guardiola loves more than anything. Footballing intelligence is everything. It really is. That is the thing that separates from the good players to the genuine great players. You can be bombastic, skillful, energetic, whatever, loads of natural talent, but if you don't know when to use that talent, you don't know when to use your talent to help your team, then you're never going to be a great player. And if Guardiola's saying that this 17-year-old kid, this 17-year-old lad from Radcliffe has so much intelligence and he learns things straight away like that, that is an incredibly good sign. It's also a good sign that Rico Lewis, if you didn't know, captains youth teams, he captains the under-18s from right back. I can't verify this, but I swear someone said he wants to captain England at youth level as well. Either way, it says a lot about his mentality that he's captaining youth teams despite being the fullback. He clearly is a player that is well respected by his peers, well respected by his coaches, and now well respected by Pep Guardiola. And we're seeing him being integrated. And what I want to discuss today is just how far could he go? I mean, I guess I would look at his overall quality and what he's got, what his weaknesses are. In terms of his actual positives that he's got, he's clearly very aware, clearly tactically very aware, very adept. He understands where he needs to be on the pitch at all times. He understands his position role and he understands how to follow instructions without needing constant motivation and guidance. Some players do need that. Look when Joshua Wilson-Esperon came on last night, a play that I really rate, but Guardiola was in his ear constantly because he was out of position in Guardiola's eyes. Rico Lewis doesn't need that. He also has a decent turn of pace. He's not fast, as such, but he's definitely not slow. He shuttles well, if that makes sense. He's got a decent turn of pace. He clearly is technically excellent. He can keep the ball really nicely. He recycles it very well. He's also a good dribbler, man. He gets forward really well. When he played as a more traditional right back in the second half, got forward. He beat Alex Telles at one point, which was really satisfying to see, the United guy on loan. And of course, he got forward and finished really nicely. He's really good at basically many stages of the play. Defensively, he's switched on. His position is really good. He's good at the build-up and working the ball in the transition from left to right and so on. He's good at the inverted midfield thing. Guardiola even at one point used him as a central midfielder when he was 17 years old. We've got one of the most gifted young attacking midfielders in world football, Phil Foden, and he can barely get a game in midfield because Guardiola only ever plays you there if he thinks you can handle it and you're good enough there. It's a massive seal of approval. And the fact that we've got him getting game time there every now and then, it just says it all how much Guardiola trusts him. So he's got all those attributes. What does he have as his weakness? Well, he's probably just a bit small. But having said that, there are many great fullbacks that are a bit small. I think Roberto Carlos was about the same height. The difference is he got stocky and lightning quick, which would definitely help. If he gets a bit quicker and a lot stockier, that would help. I mean, he is on the small side. He's like 5'5", 5'6". And when you look at the great fullbacks, there's a lot of small ones, but they're usually like 5'7", 5'8". People like Zaba were about 5'8", 5'9", and people like, I don't know, the Alba was about 5'7". There's loads of, I think people like Robertson, Liverpool is about 5'7" as well. So he's not tiny, but he's definitely not big. And even though that might not hold him back, right now he is quite slight. And I think physically he's probably got a little bit of growing to do. If he can, an inch or two would be great. And muscular, that obviously he'll fill out in time. But that's kind of it, really. I mean, there's nothing to his game that he's lacking, honestly. And when you look at the potential squad development that he's got, look, we're in a situation now where, well, not a situation now, it's been a Manchester City situation for years. The fullback issue has been something that's been hanging over Man City for many, many years. It really has done. And we're approaching a scenario where Kyle Walker, who's getting on a little bit now, his injuries are picking up, he's getting older, he's past 30. We're looking at a situation where we are potentially looking for the long-term replacement for Kyle Walker. And could it be Rico Lewis? I mean, why not? Why not? I mean, it times really nicely. We've got a guy who's just about to turn his 18 years old this month, Rico Lewis. I mean, Kyle Walker has definitely got another year or two left at least. And by the time like Rico Lewis is 20, 21, Kyle Walker will be moving down. Why can't he just step in and replace him? I don't think we need a backup right back anymore. Kyle Walker, then Rico Lewis. That to me is just how it goes. This is not meant to slander whatsoever, because I really think Sergio Gomez is a great young player and he's got loads of potential. But I already think it's notable that Sergio Gomez doesn't look quite as comfortable as a fullback as Rico Lewis, who's only 17 years old. And that's not because Sergio Gomez has done anything wrong. It's because you can tell he's an attacking midfielder who's converted to it and he's still learning this Guardiola way. Whereas Rico Lewis has been schooled in this system since he was a child and absolutely understands that role. He's just more natural there because he is simply more natural there. And I think that's really telling that we've got this guy who looks more comfortable despite not having anywhere near as much senior football as Sergio Gomez. And I think it's really encouraging, man. I think it's really encouraging. I think we've got a guy who's going to break into the Manchester City's team here. We've got another academy player coming through. It was Phil Foden. Cole Palmer's there as well, and it looks like it could be Rico Lewis too. The signs are very promising, and to me, that is everything. In football, it does matter. It does matter when young players break through. It helps the soul. It helps it nourish the club. It really does bring out the best in your team and in the fans and in the players when you've got players who celebrate with such fervour as they did last night. Look at Rico Lewis's reaction when he scored last night in the fucking Champions League, on his full Champions League debut nonetheless. His first ever start in the Champions League. He scored as a Manchester City fan, and look at his celebration to get the equaliser. He was absolutely ecstatic. He celebrated like you would, like I would. He celebrated like he'd been waiting for that moment for his entire life. That was because he simply had been waiting for that his entire life. And that does give you that edge. That does give you that more of a chance to win. When you've got players who bleed for the badge in the way that we wish we could, absolutely, that is going to make a difference in those finer margins. Because if they care about the club, if it's in their soul, if it's right through their body, the very essence of who they are, that is going to give you an edge when it really matters. So the more City fans you get in the team, the better. It isn't a coincidence that Barcelona's greatest side had loads of La Masia candidates, had loads of La Masia graduates there. It isn't even a coincidence that Man United's greatest side had loads of academy players in it as well. These things happen for a reason, because these players have the quality, but they have the soul and the charisma, and they care about it in another way that's not even possible if you're not from the country. Of course, players can get there in time. I'm sure Vinny eventually cared about it in the same way, but initially, no, it's the very soul of who they are. And that's not to say teams can't be as good without academy players. Of course, they can be. But it does give you an edge if they are not only just very good at football, but also care about this club in the way that we've all dreamt about it. Rico Lewis is living a dream, you know. It's his dream to play for Manchester City. It's his dream as a local lad. Whereas it isn't the dream of, I don't know, Calvin Phillips. Not that he doesn't want to play for Man City, but it isn't his dream to play for Man City. It was his dream to play for Leeds, which he got to do. So the edge is different, and I love it. So this is why we have to nourish these young players. I think Guardiola is aware of this, and I think this is why Guardiola is excited, because if you do get a young player who's quality, and he's a Manchester City fan, well, it's absolutely the perfect storm, and I cannot wait to see how he develops in Manchester City. Rico, if you're somehow watching this, fucking well done, lad. Well done, honestly. You revel in that. You keep your head down. You keep on working, because you are going to the top. You are incredibly gifted, incredibly intelligent, incredibly humble footballer, from far as I know, and I'm buzzing for him. Guys, that's my thoughts on Rico Lewis. He's a superstar in making, in my opinion. Do let me know what you make of him down in the comments below. And when can we see him break into this first team permanently? Can we see it sooner than we realise? Who knows? Thank you very much for watching. Go check out that episode of the playlist over on 888 Sport. The link will be in the description below. Give this video a like, subscribe, watch a match reaction from last night, and I'll catch you tomorrow for a preview.